Hello and welcome to our new Lunch and Learn series where we eat, you listen.
Yep, we've decided we're going to snack through this entire episode to stay on theme.
Stay on theme. We want to fully be, we want to be authentic to the ADHD environment.
Yeah, it's an immersive experience because as people with ADHD, we either forget to eat or we binge eat about 13 things at a time. I don't know. Do you have food ADHD?
Yes, but not as much recently because I get headaches when I don't eat.
No, when I say food ADHD, I mean like you stand in the kitchen and you're like, I want a bite of that. I want a bite of that.
Oh, yeah.
I want a bite of that. Like, and you don't even get a plate. You're just like essentially rooting around in the like. Yeah. You can spot a household full of people with ADHD based on how their cabinets all just have open bags.
Okay. Or the cabinets are straight just open. Like you walk, Crystal will walk. Crystal's my partner. She will walk into the kitchen and be like, yesterday she was like, oh my God!
Close the
Every cabinet!
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
She does leave the
microwave open though. She leaves the microwave open though. Like that's random, right?
That was, well, this is one of my favorites. Have you ever lost your coffee and found it in the microwave like a day later?
Oh, yes.
Or like a cup of tea or something. Like, where?
Yeah.
Did I put
tea,
that?
It happens with tea the most often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So anyway, welcome to the show.
I'm Megan.
And I'm Ryan. And we are being authentic.
We are being authentic.
This is actually what it's like to be in a room with us when we're not podcasting. So if the goal of the internet is authenticity, then we are nailing it.
The goal of the internet is to lie. Didn't we establish that last time? Remember that?
No. The goal of the internet is to tell positively abstracted truths or negatively abstracted truths to get the engagement.
Oh, yeah. We just have to say something controversial is what you're saying.
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to say. Okay. Carbs are good and bad. Go.
Oh, my God.
How dare you? So we were supposed to start this talking about Lizzo. That was the plan.
That is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Lizzo and convenience food culture.
Yeah.
And
Lizzo and World War II. And Ryan's going to go
convenience food culture.
Convenience, yeah. The overall theme of today's show is convenient food culture. But I'm been recently obsessed with Lizzo because she's been preaching great things on the internet. And
I don't understand this, so you're going to have to explain it to me because I'm not in the Lizzo circle currently.
Okay, so this is how I understand it. And mind you, I have not been following Lizzo, so I'm not like if you know more about the history and the timeline of it, then I might sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. But from what I see, she was like very into body positivity and being accepted in your body, which then led to some of her followers being really in the camp of not working out and not being active and like accepting that as a lifestyle. And then recently Lizzo started like working out, active lifestyle, eating healthy, all this stuff, and promoting body positivity. So like both can be true, essentially.
Right.
And she, from what I understand, she got a lot of hate for like promoting working out and healthy eating and all of that stuff. And so that was like, I don't know how many years ago that was, but like now she's like I think she's on Women's Health. But I recently saw an interview with her and she was talking about how she lost weight. And she was like, I was eating in a calorie deficit. I was also watching my protein intakes. And then someone was like, well, what really like changed it for you? She was like, well, I stopped being vegan and I started understanding where my protein was coming from. Also looking at the calories in like some of the protein bars and all of that stuff. She's like, if you look at the protein bars, they have a shit ton of calories and
they're 400 calories and they're packed full of sugar.
What do you expect? Yeah. So, yeah. So that's why I've been kind of obsessed with her lately. Because she's just been, it's like it's very simple stuff she's speaking about. But I think that it isn't talked about.
Well, and this is why I wanted to talk about kind of our understanding of food in the modern century, in the 21st century, is it's changing. I would like to say that it's changing, but not to go down the normal route of typical abstraction. But I kind of wanted to talk about. So, for those of you that don't know, I went to culinary school. My first career, I started working in restaurants as early as 14 years old, and I stayed working in food service well into my 20s, and so I that is actually my degree. That's what I went to school for. That's my thing, and of course, like any person with ADHD, I am obsessed with the topic, and so I went through a long phase of being really into traditional foods and learning about traditional foods and the right way to do everything, and then I got really into colloquial foods, meaning like cultural foods. And there's some things that you learn about cultural foods, and it's that basically it's the most creative ways that you can make 12 things. And then I got really into like pre-modern preservation methodology. So canning, drying, curing, these types of things. And so on. And so then I got into, as I've, grew more towards health and wellness, I started really studying where does our modern food culture come from? Because it's really separate from the history of food. Like, one of my favorite ones is noodles. I love the history of noodles. I think the history specifically of Italian noodles is hilarious. And I would like to point out the very specific noodle of ravioli. Let me just bring this up. The whole point of all of these wildly shaped noodles is to prove that you had enough people, that you could pay enough people and support enough people to manufacture these ridiculous noodles in order to feed an entire party of people to prove your wealth. That was the whole point of it. There was no other reason other than to do... The Victorian period... The number one thing you did not want to be in the Victorian period was boring. To be boring means that, like this was the Renaissance era. This was the period where everybody was supposed to be like, you were supposed to have a Renaissance education. Everyone was supposed to have a language and an art and a physical, like it was this very bougie, very, very and so you didn't want to have a boring party. So you needed to have something interesting, something poppy, something, and so a lot.
I'm thinking of Bridgerton. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, kind of that vibe, right?
Okay.
And so, like, a lot of our modern eating habits, our idea of what is good is actually kind of rooted in that period. But what happened was with the overthrow, like, with the rise of democracy in France and the rise of democracy in America, it all of a sudden, all of these servants that only took care of essentially what what Marx would have called the bourgeoisie, they now became liberals. They became able to share their market wares for all people. So now everyone had access to the same foods that the royals had access to, right? And so then, instead of having people do it, mechanization started doing it. So what we got was the mechanical manufacturing of something that was done by hand, and now everyone felt elevated, when in reality, you're just eating the same food product in different shapes. Okay, so pasta is a really important, there's a reason this is important to this history, is because this is a great example of how something went from being royal and very difficult to get a hold of, and it meant something, to now you eat Kraft mac and cheese, and you think of it as being kind of a staple struggle food at times, or a convenience food, and it's gone through this arc.
Or ramen noodles.
Ramen noodle. Oh my God. If you've ever seen the actual process of actually making physical ramen noodles, like real ramen noodles, and there are only a few people left in the world still doing it, it is one of the most impressive forms you have ever seen in your life. It's incredible. The average person has no idea what it really takes, and the average young person would never do it for a living, so it will most likely die as an art. It will not live, most likely.
Okay. So make the actual ramen noodles, or like the whole plate, or the whole
No, to make the
What do you
noodle
mean?
properly. To make the noodle itself
But the
properly.
the one that comes in the ramen noodle package is like that's
Is an
not what you're talking
abstraction.
about.
It's a symbol of something that once was an art form.
Okay.
But the way
Okay.
you think of it is like Nissan ramen, the classic Nissan ramen. Like actually Japan's a great example of convenience food. Like where they take
Yeah.
traditional foods. Again, we take that traditional pasta, and it gets turned into a 30-cent ramen package, right?
Yeah.
And like it goes through this process.
Yeah. So what I think about when you're talking about what is considered a good food for society, healthy food, like food that is wanted by a lot of people, I think about how in present day the convenience factor is all based on, or like what we decide to eat is based on convenience and marketing, and how it's kind of like viewed as. So like anything that's green has health on it, has like protein, has fiber on it, and there are like all these buzzwords. Whatever the buzzword is of the time, and you plaster that on the package, or you can like make it a superfood, make it some whatever the buzzword is. That is how you're gonna get people to eat those foods, and how a lot of times those foods are actually not that much better than foods that are like in cans, which is what we were talking about prior to this.
Yeah, that's how we got
why
into
we
this.
That's how we got into this conversation, is that like, why are canned foods not something that is talked about as much when it comes to healthy food? Like you think about the influencers, you don't often see an influencer like opening a can of beans and putting it in their food. That's not something that's like deemed as healthy or like more or better than a fresh green beans that you get from like the market. And why is that, Ryan?
Well, where I came from on that
This
was
is what we're talking about.
most people will buy a $6 package of something in a box before they would buy a 79-cent can of beans.
Yeah.
And if you want to get into the health and wellness perspective of it, you should soak your beans. You should actually take them from dry all the way through. That's going to be the healthiest way to eat beans, period. But there's a time component, right? So if we look at food, convenience food culture and American history are deeply, deeply, deeply intertwined. Which is why the obesity epidemic hits us first. And you notice that other cultures that adopt Western diets, it hits them next. And Japan is another version of this.
Japan has adopted
obesity
Western
problems?
No, but has adopted Western or like American food, Western food,
Oh
American
my God,
food.
yes. Absolutely.
Like in terms of the convenience food, or like burgers, or like what, or in general?
Yes. Yes.
Everything.
Do you know what
Nice.
Do you know what the most popular topping on pizza is worldwide?
Pineapple and ham.
That is a solely American thing. No. It's corn.
Ew.
It's like the one thing we don't. Yeah, exactly. See, it's the one thing we don't put on pizza.
Why? Corn is like just this.
No, everybody loves corn on pizza, man. I've been to so many countries where corn on pizza is a thing. But Japan, like, well,
They have
Japan kinda has a
pepperoni on their
hyper-commercial culture, actually. So the way that it works is the first form of like processed food that really hit and made a big difference was canned foods, canned beans in particular, were absolutely vital in settling the West in America. And it was because you had a easy, storable form of food that you could carry with you and eat. All you had to do was dump it in a plate and heat it over a fire, and it was hot, and you could eat it cold. You could eat it right out of the can, and it had carbs, it had fiber, it had protein. You were good. So
you were also
canned
alive.
beans. Yep. Yeah. And then you could supplement otherwise. The really common like forms of food that you see in old American culture are things like, we relied heavily on wheat, oats, barley, and corn. That is essentially like American grain. And you'll notice that up until a certain point, porridge, single pot meals and porridge were super, super normal. So beans and cornbread, beans and cornbread, man, built the freaking railroads. Like, beans and cornbread.
I like cornbread.
I like cornbread. Everybody likes cornbread. But I mean,
That's not
or
true.
beans and
But yeah.
grits. But so you weren't always guaranteed meat, but as long as beans were around, and beans to this day feed most of the world. I once read an article that was called, "Can you live on beans and rice alone?" The answer is probably, you probably shouldn't, but most of the world does.
World does. Yeah.
So, and it's because it makes a complete protein. It's a reasonable staple food, and it's dry, so you can mobilize it very, very easily. Well, for Americans,
what else
corn was a pretty solid staple food.
You know what I also noticed about not corn, what I've noticed about beans, rice, and potatoes specifically is that when there are people who have any sort of gut issues, any digestive issues, those seem to be foods that don't fuck with them as much as other foods. And it will keep them it'll keep them eating. Where sometimes people who have issues like that, they just stop eating. But if they have options like a potato or rice or beans, they will at least get some nutrients.
So and there are some downsides to legumes. Some people don't handle them well. They do have phytonutrients in them that if you do not soak them properly or you don't prepare them properly, they can leach nutrients out of your body. That's all true. Like, all foods have positives and negatives, but if I'm going to go Snickers versus a can of beans, I'm going a can of beans every time.
Can of beans.
Yep.
Yep.
Unless the zombies are coming for me, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But basically, early on, canned foods were a way of stabilizing a reasonable protein source that predates the 20th century. So that was pretty and actually going as far back as like Lewis and Clark, when they were just exploring the landmass of America, one of the oldest forms of preserved protein and energy was this stuff called pemmican. And pemmican is essentially pulverized jerky rolled in fats and then mixed with like dried fruits. And this stuff was vital in the settling of America. Pemmican was one of the most important staple foods. It's basically like a meaty hardtack. It is, if you don't know what hardtack is, that's a whole nother thing. But long story short, like these basic staple foods, or a sea biscuit, we've all heard of a sea biscuit. Sea biscuit is just rye hardtack. And hardtack is a saltine cracker that's not very fun to eat. It's so hard. It's called hardtack because if you can't just eat it, you have to soak it. It's basically wheat flour, salt, and water that's been dried till it is essentially a stable brick. And it allows you to convert that into, you can take it, you can crush it, you can mix it with water, you can heat it. Hardtack and beans kind of made the world go round for a long time. So as far as convenience foods were concerned, pemmican, hardtack, early canned beans, that's kind of processed food up until basically the early 20th century.
Wait, could you make other foods with hardtack?
Yeah, it's hardtack
Like
goes
bread
as
and
far
stuff?
back as like the Roman era almost. It's been around forever.
Interesting.
It's essentially a calorie staple.
Okay.
So you have to think about food this way. The history of food works like this. I take a food, whatever it is, and I do one of two things. I either through a process turn it into an edible state where the nutrition is unlocked and I eat it, or through a process I preserve it somehow and then at some point turn it into an edible state. But in the middle zones, it's not really edible or enjoyable, and I can't leave it in that state. If I leave it in that state, it will go bad.
Yeah.
So basically, whenever we're talking about food, we're talking about trying to convert it from a fresh state into a stable state where it can be held, or into an edible state. That's basically all we're doing. Does that make sense?
And yes, it makes sense because we've perfected the first one, making it stable forever in America.
Oh, for sure. But for example, one of the things that's great about beans, and the reason they've been around since forever, is because you can actually literally dry them on the plant. You just grow the plant, you let it dry in the sun, you take the plant, you lay out a sheet, and you shake it, and the legumes hit the plant, and you pick up the sheet, and you pour it into a bucket, and you're done. It's actually a really easy way to do like basic food production, and then you store it and you have it. It's not. Yeah. So when you think about it from that perspective, like corn is actually very similar in that you grow it, it sits on the stalk, you click it off, you're good. So now we move into the 20th century.
Doesn't corn have like no nutritional value though? Wait, hold on. Doesn't corn have like no nutritional value? I once heard
an evolutionary biologist say he would rather have his children have a drug problem than have a corn problem. It falls in the realm. Yeah. Like just to be fair, like corn is one of those things that you eat so you don't die. But if you're looking for like optimal health, there's a lot of debate as to whether or not we should be eating it, particularly in its modern incarnation.
Really?
Look it up.
Okay, so yeah. So
I'm not gonna take a side on this. I'm just saying there are some pretty strong voices against corn.
Not... I'm pretty strongly against corn. I don't like corn that much.
Well,
but mostly for a taste situation. Yeah, it isn't. Yeah.
It's in everything.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of the episode. Part 2 coming out next week.